Occasional recording. It was recorded on the 19th of June 1978. The title is Education in the Modern Age, and the speaker is Swami Ranganathananda. He's from the Ramakrishna Mission headquarters, Hyderabad, India.
And welcome to Cat Public Lecture. Tonight, as you know, Swami Ranganathananda of the Ramakrishna Order of India will be speaking to you. And following the talk, there will be an opportunity for question and answers. The weather has been dreadful, and you're to be congratulated at the outset for coming. We hope that you will enjoy the talk. I met Swamiji last year, and I heard him give a talk. And I'm very happy that he's able to be here tonight and to interact with you. I think you'll enjoy it.
I am very thankful to this university for this kind invitation. For the last several months, we have been corresponding with each other, Dr. Blair and myself, regarding this engagement and the subject of education, which is receiving much attention today in the context of modern developments. That subject was the topic of discussion in our correspondence, and we decided that I should spend my one extra day here during my this 3 weeks visit, and that will be in this university, in this Department of Education, and to discuss the subject which you found announced, education in the modern age, new dimensions. It is a very challenging subject. I shall try to convey to you some of the salient ideas on this subject of new dimensions in education. And later on, when there will be question-answer session, we shall be able to amplify many things of the subject. When we speak of new dimensions, the question arises, what are the current dimensions in education? During this modern period of human history, education has received considerable emphasis, and this education has created the modern world and the modern man. Two vital ingredients of this education, of this modern period, are worth noting at the beginning itself. One is certainly modern science, because the creator of the modern age is modern science. Modern science also brought along with it, in the course of its development, largely as a byproduct, what we call modern humanism. Science is a pursuit of truth. By pursuing truth in the objective world through methods which have been already developed by modern science, science discovered truth after truth regarding the world in which we live. And these discoveries led on to further inventions in the technological fields, the pure science flowing into applied fields, and that second development created a new social ferment, making for a revolution in man's external life. From that time onwards, it has been a continuing march. Scientific discoveries most of them becoming transformed into inventions, technological changes, and also industrial development and progress. All these things created modern civilization and the modern man for nearly 4 centuries. But this departure from older systems of education and a previous type of civilization, which we note from about the Renaissance and the Reformation, this developed away from one of the greatest traditions of man, namely religion. Though religion continued to be associated with civilization, not in a friendly way, but at the background. But in later developments of modern civilization, there has been a complete breakaway from any inspiration from the world of religion. We characterize civilization, therefore, since the Renaissance as secular. Secular knowledge and secular civilization. And this has gone on with increasing speed until we come to this 20th century. And we experience not only some of its great blessings along with people in the 19th century, but some of the curses also have begun to appear in this pursuit of secular values only on the part of modern man. It is in this context that this subject of new dimensions becomes significant. Does science suggest today new dimensions to our education and also to modern man? So far, sciences had not suggested any such new dimensions. Science was frankly physical, secular, rationalistic, and completely this worldly. That is why it became associated with certain dogmas which pure science itself doesn't accept, namely the dogma of materialism. No science has propounded anything called materialism, but science studies matter as revealed the 5 senses of man. And this study goes deeper and deeper. But all the levels so far studied dealt only with matter as revealed to the 5 senses, that sensate world that impinges upon all human beings from the time of the birth of the child itself. It is this study that has become so fruitful in creating a rich modern civilization, where man's control over his environment is almost total. Not only his immediate environment, but even faraway environment in the depths of space. This is something astonishing and something praiseworthy. And the humanism that came along with it, as I said, as a byproduct, came with a view to changing man's life in the context of his society. Quick changes came from feudalism, democracy, industrial developments creating a new awareness of neighborliness, communications making for breakdown of distances, ultimately in the post-war period, a global awareness and a global human situation. In these various developments, certain moral values also came along with them, among which the value of humanism, man at the center of attention. this center of attention centered in man was very much helped and furthered by the decline of attention to God somewhere in the heavens, as remarked by historian Toynbee in his famous book, Historian's Approach to Religion, that as a result of religious wars and persecutions in the pre-Reformation period and immediate post-Reformation period, culminating in the 30 Years' War in Germany between Protestants and Catholics, the Western mind decided that it is waste of time to study specifications for a kingdom of heaven which cannot be settled between two great components of a great religion. It is better to invest our energies on a kingdom of earth where man can live as a friend of man and try to make the best of it here. So by eliminating something that is called heaven, a post-mortem condition, man developed interest in man himself, a concentrated interest. This has produced great results. In fact, I consider humanism as one of the great products of the modern age. But it had its origins in the past, in the Greco-Roman period of history. And this humanism is found in other parts of the world, such as China, India, and elsewhere. Though in all those areas, humanism was not entirely cut off from a cosmic background, from something transcendental in both man and the cosmos. But modern humanism, with all the scientific strength behind it, is overtly this worldly, concerned with this human life here on earth, without any reference to anything transcendental. Using the word transcendental, even in its psychological sense, lying above the sensate level. What is all that is studied by physical science? The world revealed to the five senses and to instruments helpful to the sense organs. In modern life, therefore, we have the fullest example of a thoroughly secular human civilization. Religion playing only a fringe part in that civilization. Its strength is physical science. And the 19th century, this physical science was essentially materialistic and truly physical. And everything was deterministic. And if nature is deterministic, nature's product, man, also is deterministic. So our study of man also was conditioned by this deterministic attitude of physical sciences, beginning with our physiology, anatomy, neurology, even psychology. And that study of psychology particularly, developing highly deterministic tendencies, gave us the psychology of behaviorism with its variant which developed in Pavlov's psychology in Soviet Russia. Here there is a complete statement about man and nature, all deterministic, nothing higher than what can be studied by the senses and by instruments. This is towards the end of the 19th century. And since this development has come in man's estimate of the world and estimate of himself by the dictates of physical science, it must be interesting for us to speculate. If physical science changes its stand and reveals something deeper, both in nature and in man, it must have its repercussions on man's estimate of nature and himself. It is this question that becomes most fascinating in the context of this current century. Unfortunately, the impact of scientific discoveries on human life and human thought takes a little time. 50 to 60, 80 years will be needed for the impact to be felt on human life, and particularly in the field of education. Today we are still living in that 19th century atmosphere of physical science, characterized by thorough determinism, both in natural sciences and in the science of man. But in this 20th century, there have been revolutionary discoveries in the physical sciences whose full impact on a philosophy of man and nature has yet to be felt. But that impact is slowly getting visible. These discoveries, coming from two particularly important sciences, namely physics and biology, have, as I think, great reference to man, his education, his life, and his destiny. And that impact is not something that goes against the previous impact, creating this wonderful technological civilization and man's control over the forces of external nature. This new impact, according to some of the great thinkers, especially in the Eastern countries, is entirely complementary to whatever developments have taken place so far. I particularly mention this and stress these Eastern countries because there has been a viewing of man and nature in a synoptic vision without that contradictory positions taken by not only the sciences of the West, but also the religions of the West. Conflict between science and religion is essentially a Western experience. It is not there in the Eastern traditions, where knowledge was always considered as one, where knowledge can be divided for purposes of study and research as secular and transcendental, where man can be studied, physical and non-physical. But to carry that distinction too far will defeat the very purpose of seeking for knowledge. Like the oceans that surround the earth knows only one ocean. But we study this ocean under different names as Atlantic, Pacific, Indian, etc. For purposes of study, research and communication, this kind of differentiation is quite all right. But if you go beyond this and consider they are all separate oceans, that will be quite untrue to reality itself. So this unifying vision of both man and nature, something that comes at the purview of the senses, something that lies above in some depths, in some high dimension. This view is slowly gaining ground from physical sciences themselves. This evening, in dealing with this particular subject, I shall very, very briefly touch upon some of these essential points of contact between the insights of physical science in this modern post-war period and the insights of philosophies that have studied man above the organic dimension, particularly in the Eastern tradition. Firstly, we have the revolutions in physical science in this century. Every scientist, particularly every physicist, insists that it is a revolution. It's not a new adjustment. It's not a little bit of change here, change there. It is a real revolution. Whether we study Einstein or Heisenberg or any other great scientist, the physics of this 20th century is so different from the physics of the 19th century. And the cosmology of the science of this century is revolutionary from the point of view of change. In fact, some of the words used are very significant. Sir James Jeans, even giving a title to his book, The New Background of Science, or his earlier book, The Mysterious Universe, uses an expression to characterize this revolutionary change, and that is, unless you remove your human spectacle of vision, you cannot understand the cosmos revealed by 20th century science. Removing the human spectacle. That's a very, very effective expression. This sensory vision by which we study nature, unless you remove that sensory vision, nature's revelations in this 20th century through subatomic physics, quantum physics, particle physics cannot be appreciated at all. We are still dealing with a physical universe. We are still dealing with matter, but we are going deep into that matter. And the word matter can remain because it is just a symbol. As for that, no science has ever defined what matter is. The earlier definition up to the 19th century was matter is, or physical world is, what is substantial, and everything else is insubstantial. The whole world of spiritual experiences were generally treated as insubstantial, therefore unreal. Sir James Jeans takes up this subject of substantial. What do you mean by being substantial? And this is what he says about it. Substantiality is a mental concept that judges things in terms of their impact to our sense of touch. That's what makes a thing substantial. If it is beyond that horizon, it becomes insubstantial. And every physicist today will tell you that every reality revealed by quantum physics is all insubstantial. That's the language. The word touch, the word even seeing has no relevance there. They all lie above the sensory level of man. That's why strange language becomes used to dealing with such reality. Language which is inadmissible in dealing with realities in classical physics. Paradoxical language comes in. Things which can say that a thing can be or it not be. Thing is only a probability. Now these are not words liked by classical science, but you can't escape those words in this 20th century physics. All the realities are concerned in the same process of paradoxes. And so scientists tell us today that physics is in touch with certain deeper dimensions of reality in the physical world, which needs a new language, a new set of symbols and terminologies, and every physicist is fashioning such symbols and terminologies. This is revolution enough. Both relativity and quantum, when they deal with realities, they will always insist this is expressed in quantum language. In quantum terms, they will say, where space as we understand it has no meaning at all. where time and space become blended together. A thing that you cannot even conceive from a purely physical point of view. But that's the world in which a scientist moves all the time. That is why the word mystery is used again and again. The world is mysterious. To a newborn baby, the world is a profound mystery. According to William James' expression, to the newborn baby, the world is a buzzing, booming confusion. That is a mystery. But in spite of all the scientific developments of these few centuries, revolutionary developments, has it ceased to be a mystery to the great scientists of today? And they will answer, no. It is still a profound mystery. The more we know, the more the mystery deepens. That is a remarkable position in this most exact science called physics. But even though this itself is something remarkable, what comes next is still more remarkable. And that is expressed by one of the scientists, Lincoln Barnett, writing on the subject, the universe and Dr. Einstein, with the collaboration of Einstein himself. Towards the end of the book, summarizing the impact of these scientific discoveries of the 20th century on man's knowledge and the world in which man lives, Lincoln Barnett says, we do not understand the vast, veiled universe in which our life is cast simply because we do not understand ourselves. This is not a scientific sentence, not a sentence from any scientist up to the 19th century. What has understanding of ourselves to do regarding understanding of the world? These are two separate things. I am far out of the world, and I study world objectively and precisely. That's all what we had throughout classical physics. But here comes 20th century physics and tells, as if echoing the language of great ancient philosophers of the East, that we do not understand the vast, veiled universe in which our life is cast simply because we do not understand ourselves. And in that statement, he also quoted the great Niels Bohr, Danish physicist, where he puts this remarkable mystery of man in the forefront, that man is both spectator and actor in the world of existence. Man is a spectator, not only an actor. He has a tremendously deep dimension. But its importance in physics is revealed in the interpretation of the quantum theory, according to many great authorities, including the great German physicist Wigner, that an interpretation of the quantum theory cannot be complete and cannot be consistent without reference to the consciousness of the observer. The word observer is a very technical term. The observed data also is a technical term. In trying to interpret observed data, why should I take into account the observer? Up to this modern period, there was no need. The observer is taken for granted. You can just assume him, that is all. But our concern is the observed data. But strangely, in quantum field of physical science, the observer becomes an important datum because the very presence of the observer disturbs the observed data. That's the nature of all quantum phenomena. And therefore, a study of the observer becomes an important study even from scientific point of view. Wigner suggests that new developments in science, I mean pure science, interpretation of the phenomena revealed by our scientific experiments, will need focusing attention on the nature of this new datum on the horizon of scientific thought, namely the consciousness of the observer. In fact, one of the scientists even suggests, along with Wigner, that if this is so, it is good for physics to turn to the great Eastern mystics, Hindu, Buddhist and Tao, to understand this great subject, for that was the main subject which they studied and in which their contributions are remarkably modern. In a recent book written by Professor Kapra of the Physics Department of Berkeley University, with a very, very significant title, The Tao of Physics. This great Physics Department of Berkeley University, with a very, very significant title, The Tao of Physics. This great, very lucid writer on some of the most complex subjects of quantum physics, including the latest particle physics, he says that physics is not the same thing as technology. Physics has a new face, or rather an old face which is rather forgotten. As a search for truth, it doesn't stop at a particular level. It goes deep. And in that search, this physics today has become a Tao, means a divine way to man's spiritual knowledge and realization. Now, this is a statement in the beginning of the book, stating about the aim of the author in writing this book, that physics is not the same thing as technology. If technology has made great progress and given great blessings to man by way of an environment which he can control and manipulate, that very technology has become slowly the enemy of man, creating various problems, ecological and otherwise. And so there is a reaction against science, which is actually a reaction against technology, or over technology. But that reaction should not invade the precincts of pure science and pure physics, says Kapra. Even a biologist and humanist like the late Julian Huxley also protested against this association of science with only production and consumption. That is a common man's view. Unfortunately, the view of many uncommon men and women also. That science means industry, technology, gadgets, comfort, that's all. So Huxley protested that quantity of material production is but a means to a further end. It is not an end in itself. Quality is the end and not quantity. And he further emphasized more than a certain number of calories and cocktails and washing machines and TV sets per person is not only unnecessary but bad. Now, this kind of an emphatic statement from highly distinguished scientists, both in physics as well as in the life science, points to some new reshaping of the whole picture of the universe and man given by science, with tremendous possibilities of impact upon the human situation, including education. Consciousness is a remarkable datum. So far it was studied by physiology, anatomy, neurology. beginning from the outside. And then it developed into behavioristic psychology. Even today, it's a dominant psychology in many advanced countries. But other psychologists are protesting. The mind has been completely ignored. Something deeper in man has been completely ignored. We are dealing only with the machine side of man. Man the known. Man subject to cause and effect determinism like anything else is nature. But a profound datum in man is completely ignored by the study. That is the protest coming today. And great research is going on in the field of neurology and the living brain in numberless research institutions throughout the world to ask this crucial question and to get the answer. Is man equally determined by cause and effect mechanism as nature is? Most part of man seems to be so. Our body is so. Nervous system is so. Much of mind also is subject to cause and effect determinism. But these researchers are trying to establish whether there is such a thing called freedom in man. Now, freedom is a great word. We use it in politics, economics, sociology. But when you deal with it in this context, freedom means self-determinism, not determined by external forces. But so far as man is concerned, many of these sciences will tell us, including molecular biology, that man is conditioned by physical and chemical forces which are within himself. His emotions, his thoughts, his reactions to human and social situations, these are all predictable. These are all conditioned by the chemistry and physics of his bodily fluids, including the brain fluids. That's an extreme position. But certain new data revealed by these researchers also tell us man can alter them, alter the chemistry and physics of his body. If so, freedom ceases to be a mere desire or a wish. It has basis in fact. On the one side, in physics, dealing with the depth of nature, we found determinism breaking down. In dealing with electrons and subatomic particles, we are dealing with a region of the universe where the usual laws of cause and effect do not operate. That's why Heisenberg formulated his theory of the quantum as indeterminacy theory. Determinacy means you can predict. In this case, no prediction is possible. Why not possible? Because two data are necessary to make a correct prediction. But the truth is, if you know one datum precisely, you will never know the other datum precisely regarding an electron, namely the position at a particular point of time at which the electron is and the momentum of its motion. If you know position, you will not know momentum. If you know momentum, you will never know position. And without both, you can't predict. So only probability language can be used in dealing with these subjects. If that is so in this physical world, here you find evidence coming from brain research itself. In the world of man, that at a deeper level, freedom is a fact or determinacy doesn't function. This is just a suggestion which may be further explored, and we can take it. So far as the physical sciences are concerned, a crucial decision will come someday or the other. That will be a great gain. But even as it is, in physics we have seen that physical data cannot be understood without the new datum emerging on the horizon of science, namely the datum of the observer, the consciousness of the observer. And today's physics and astronomy are very, very clear in their understanding that the whole universe is a system of interpenetrating realities, nothing in isolation. Extreme statements are made which looks extreme to us, but in science it is not extreme. Namely, that any event in this particular part of the planet cannot be understood without reference to what is happening in the far distant regions of space. In formulating his relativity theory, Einstein got inspiration from his predecessor Mach, the great German physicist, who put forward this subject. And today it is accepted in physical science that universe is an interpenetrating system of forces where understanding one item involves understanding everything else. That itself makes for indeterminacy. But you can never understand all the forces acting at a time. You can abstract some and study. For practical purposes it is okay, but not understanding the nature of things. So from this point of view, we are at a very critical situation in the world of physical science. Its study of the cosmos and the study of man. In the field of the life science, biology, a similar development has been going on during this modern period. Ever since Darwin's promulgation of his evolutionary theory and the causes of evolution, there has been 100 years of revolutionary changes in biology. At that time, he formulated evolution in certain words which have been used and reused not only in science but invading also economics, politics, society, every aspect of life. Struggle for existence, adaptation, survival of the fittest. This has invaded every department of life. Competition, struggle, competition, struggle. It was Darwin's collaborator, Thomas Huxley, who pointed out at that time, last century, that nature reveals competition, struggle, and survival of the fittest. But in moral life, man's ethical life, another law prevails, namely the fitting of as many as possible fit to survive. That is moral law. So this cosmic law, which is revealed in evolution, goes against the law found in ethics and morality. And science cannot give a support as existing in 19th century to this ethics and morality. That support is coming from 20th century biology today, where neither Huxley nor Darwin could find support from theory of evolution and biology to the moral impulse in man. 20th century biology finds it as central to evolution at this human stage. These are remarkable conclusions arising from a scientific congress of biologists held at the Chicago University in the 10 years ago, celebrating the centenary of Darwin's publication of his book, Origin of Species. The proceedings of this conference are available to us in 3 volumes, Evolution after Darwin. Very great biologists have taken part in the discussions. One thing that struck me in going through those volumes is this restatement about the trend of evolution and the goal of evolution. Fact of evolution is well established as by Darwin, but the trend and goal have been slightly modified in these 100 years, particularly in this post-war period. And there, this is the conclusion that is relevant to our subject of this evening's talk, and that is evolution at the human stage has ceased to be organic. It has risen to the psychosocial level. It's a new term, psychosocial evolution. Evolution is a remarkable phenomenon. Starting as a cosmic process, it developed into an organic process with the appearance of the living cell on the horizon of evolution. Then for millions of years, this organic evolution continued, developing new organs, new systems within the body of the entity concerned, ultimately developing the perfect nervous system and the cerebral system. That is man, in whom evolution has achieved at the organic phase a certain supreme development of the cerebral system. That organ is a versatile organ, with the help of which you can develop any organs you need, more efficient than what nature can give you in a wasteful, long evolutionary process. Is a versatile organ, with the help of which you can develop any organs you need, more efficient than what nature can give you in a wasteful, long evolutionary process. And so biology insists today that with the appearance of man on the horizon of evolution, organic evolution has ascended to a new phase, and that phase is termed psychosocial evolution. Just like the appearance of the living cell made evolution ascend from the cosmic to the organic phase. These are all remarkable studies and observations in biology today. With man, evolution study stands in a new footing. He has this organic system which can invent organs whatever he needs, like the wings of an aeroplane. If so, what is the new dimension of evolution? What is this psychosocial evolution? For the first time in evolution, this human organism has the power to observe evolution, to alter evolution, to carry it forward in certain directions. This is possible because of his new capacities for thinking, for will, for purpose, for reason, and for speech communication. Along with this, the most important aspect of evolution at the stage of man is the birth of culture, a new phenomenon in evolution. There is no culture up to the human stage of evolution. There is genetic continuity. But in the case of man, man has two sets of inheritances: genetic, which he shares with the pre-human phase of evolution, and cultural, which is his own unique development. And culture has been made possible by speech communication, by which not only you experience life, but you store it and you pass it on cumulatively to succeeding generations, setting in motion the new inheritance called culture. So culture is defined in biology today as self-duplicating mind, as the cell was defined by biology earlier as self-duplicating matter. With the appearance of this new value called culture, genetic inheritance of man becomes secondary in importance compared to this cultural inheritance. And education is primarily concerned with that cultural aspect of the human inheritance. Genetic aspect is concerning education also, but the main aspect is the second one, which is culture. Every child doesn't come into the world just as a tabula rasa. You've got all the cultural developments of the past. and his mind can train itself in enriching, adding to this cultural inheritance. Thus, progress in a new dimension, namely non-physical, non-organic, or mental, moral, aesthetic, spiritual. The whole of human evolution today is poised to take the first steps and continue the remaining part of the journey on this long road of a psycho-social evolution, says biology today. And in this psycho-social evolution, man develops the capacity to detach himself from this organic system and expand in sympathy, compassion, understanding, spirit of service, and put himself into the hearts of millions of other psyches in society. This is psycho-social evolution. The word expansion comes there, expanding beyond the frontiers of the organic system, which no animal could do. Physically limited he still remains, but something inside is unlimited, growing beyond that dimension. That is called ethical sense, thus called moral value. That is a remarkable new discovery with great impact, first on ethics and morality, then through education on the whole aspect of human life and destiny. These are just simple ideas in certain higher reaches of biology today. But in course of time, when they become more generally known and becomes integrated with literature and art, later on education, we can expect big changes to take place in man's knowledge of himself, his place in the cosmos, and the direction of his life energies. It is this that becomes so central to our topic, new dimensions in education. There is some profound entity or a profound dimension in every human being. He cannot be exhausted merely in his organic system. This system is a most wonderful, efficient organism evolved by nature. But nature did not give it to him as a final datum, as an initial datum. Even the ego that is presented in him in the organic system, a new entrant into the world of evolution at the stage of man, even that is only a provisional datum. It has to go still further and still further. That's a remarkable idea. The concept of the ego, which you can never trace anywhere in evolution, neither in the cosmic evolution nor in organic evolution. But at the stage of man, it appears. When nature has become sufficiently variegated, organized, and diversified in that human organism, this new value appears. It was not there before, in the sense it was not appearing there. Nature had it at one of its own dimension. This inner dimension of nature, I am using the word inner dimension, which is very much emphasized by the late Chardin, paleontologist. Nature has a within dimension, not only a without dimension. The without dimension we study in physics and astronomy and chemistry, etc. The within dimension we study in a study of man in depth. That study has hardly begun, but the recognition has started that nature has a within dimension, and that within dimension is being revealed in nature's finest product up to date, namely man. The self, the concept of I, the observer, the knower. It's a new datum, and we know very little about it. The whole of modern education will become revolutionized when education takes account of this new datum, or the most ancient datum neglected for centuries, and begins to focus attention on how to handle this new datum. The first thought that comes to you from biology is that the ego that appears in a child at the age of 2.5 is not a final datum about that baby. It is only an initial datum. If I am to quote a famous sentence from that big, bulky book on modern evolution or biology, The Science of Life by H.G. Wells, G.P. Wells and Julian Huxley, published over 50 years ago. This ego in man, or the self, may be one of nature's devices, the exact sentence I am quoting, may be one of nature's devices, a convenient provisional delusion of considerable strategic value in evolution. This ego is not a final datum. It is a tip of an immense rock appearing on the surface of the water level. Similarly, at the sensate level, ego appears here. But it is an immense reality, which has come only just a tip here. There is so much to do in unraveling the dimension of this ego value that appears in evolution. But it is an immense value, every biologist will admit today, because no other animal has this ego, the concept of self. Their awareness is entirely the not-self, the observed data, the environment. Man alone has awareness of the not-self along with awareness of the self. What is the significance of this new datum? In a famous book on neurology by the living author, Grey Walter of Bristol, neurologist, he asked this question: what is significant about this new datum? You may ignore it. You may say it is not very important, but it is significant. Because this made man dominant nature. This made man understand evolution and the capacity to alter it, to give it a direction, to freely take advantage of nature's and human forces and give a direction to all of them. That freedom came to man through this new datum. And he tells us that if you doubt that this datum is so significant, I only ask you one question. Suppose the tiger or the lion had developed this new datum in itself, what would have been the result? And with a chuckle in his eyes, he writes, then you and I won't be here to discuss this question. Any entity that developed this new dimension will dominate nature. And that's what you see every day. A child of 4 sitting on a huge horse, directing it. Or a child of 4 sitting in eastern countries on a big buffalo, directing it. What is there in that child that's not in that huge animal, that it can dominate it? Organically, it is a flimsy something. It can be crushed in no time. But there is something else in that child that is significant, and that makes him dominant in nature. If a small fraction of this new datum can give man so much energy and power, how much more lies to be discovered and acquired in this great field, and we know so little about it. Julian Huxley mentions there in that Chicago University discussions, the study of the mind has hardly begun. We have only scratched the surface of this great subject. And all the scratching we do only from the outside, not from the inside at all. A little bit of scratching within started with Freud's discovery of the subconscious and unconscious. That's just the beginning of a depth psychology. Not deep yet, but deeper than a mere behaviorist psychology. But this subject holds great possibilities for man in this modern age. If physics says it can be revolutionized by turning its attention to the observer, if biology says that this new datum in man has significance, what a tremendous possibility lies hidden in this great subject. That brings us the memory of that great mantra uttered by ancient Greek sage, the oracle of Delphi. Man, know thyself. It is good to know the world. It is good to control the forces of nature. That's beautiful. But if you do it in isolation, you will be in trouble. You must know what you are. You are not merely an outpost of nature. There is a profound dimension within yourself. It is this great subject that becomes the central theme of a whole science of man in depth developed in India from the time of the Upanishads 4,000 years ago up to date. Man in depth is a remarkable study that this human being has a depth dimension which you can come to by taking him from the outside as a body, studying him as his physiology, anatomy, neurology, psychology, and go deeper. You will be penetrating various layers that lie outside, just like a physicist penetrated various layers lying in matter. We had the molecular world, and penetration gave us atomic world, then subatomic, and that penetration goes on. At a certain time, that penetration has to stop. There's a dead wall there, saying, continue the next penetration, then you will clear up this mystery. That's penetration into the consciousness itself, the observer. So in that way, the great sages of the Upanishads did this precisely scientific work regarding this new datum. New datum, so far as modern science is concerned, man in depth. It is just a science with all the quality of a science, objectivity, precision, and verification. You can check up what exactly is the nature of man. You see, just this organic system. Ethical experience, moral experience reveals to us a higher dimension. If I am just an organic system seeking organic satisfactions, I shall be a wild animal trying to exploit everyone around me. Competition, struggle, destroying everybody else except I. But no, this I has a deeper dimension. That's why moral experience becomes possible. I am prepared to die so that you live. What is the nature of that experience? A person can stab a person to take some money from him, or he can lift him up, save him, giving his own life to him. That is moral experience. It doesn't come from man at the organic dimension. Some deeper dimension is involved in that process. The capacity to love, to dig affections in each other, to serve, to dedicate. These are as much data regarding man as competition, struggle, and violence. And when we study man, which is the subject of all anthropology, we have been limiting our anthropology only to primitive man, man at a very low level of evolution or civilization. In that discussion, in the Chicago Congress, the anthropological section said we need a new anthropology, studying man at all levels. Man as a Jesus, man as a Buddha, man as a Ramakrishna. What do you find in them? Organically limited, but something in him unlimited, expansive, infinite, covering the whole of humanity in compassion and love. That man has to be studied if you want a complete anthropology. We do have man at the lower level, competing, struggling, violence, destruction, and self-aggrandizement. We are also man at the highest level, prepared to sacrifice everything and doing it with a smile. Men whose hearts are such tremendous, gigantic processing plants where you put raw material called anger, lust, violence, and it becomes processed and is sent out as pure love, compassion, benevolence. What must be the nature of that heart? Nature of that mind, nature of that self, that such things had happened. This is a great subject, dealing with man in depth. And today, from all angles, this subject becomes very, very important. Study of man in depth. The science developed in the Upanishads has a very scientific name. It's called Adhyatma Vidya. Study of man as the Atman, as the spark of the divine, as immortal and free, Thus, the discovery of the sages, by penetrating into the heart of man, removing all those impediments on the way which restricts man's fullest expression in his true form, they discovered the immortal and the divine behind this mortal, tiny, flimsy organic system. This is a profound discovery, and they call the science, therefore, the science of man in depth. In the language of Sir Julian Huxley applied to this science, it can be called the science of human possibilities. What infinite possibilities are lying hidden in every human being. Here is a newborn baby, hardly 7 pounds in weight. A little extra heat and cold can destroy it. So flimsy as a tiny organism. But we all suspect in the eyes of that baby vast dimensions of growth and development, that tomorrow he may become Olympic runner, a great scientist, a great ethical leader, and a great spiritual teacher. All that are hidden within that tiny organic system. Do we not need a science that can unravel this deep mystery of man in depth and make that science has its impact on human life and destiny through the educational process? We have rarely asked this question. Today we are not only compelled to ask it from theoretical considerations due to developments in physics and biology, but by practical consideration that man has become reduced to nothingness through discoveries he himself made regarding the nature outside. Not knowing his own nature, he has become slave to his own discoveries and inventions. Man's redemption, man's true freedom cannot come until man discovers this wonderful dimension of his, the spiritual dimension of man. This is the great subject highlighted in that Adhyatma Vidya given to us in that great philosophy known as Vedanta, which has been a continuing philosophy, checked and rechecked down the ages, from the time of the Upanishads up to Sri Ramakrishna in our own time. This great science has found its advocates, experimenters, discoverers in all parts of the world. Whether we study Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, or any other great religion, in every one of them you found this great science, the science of man in depth, and the discovery that behind this sensate man is something infinite, something pure, something free. In the language of Jesus, given just in a few words in the Sermon on the Mount, the kingdom of heaven is within all, within you. This science holds the key today for human redemption in this wonderful age in which we are living. Listening to and responding to the Greek oracle, man, know thyself. Education has to take this new dimension into account today, which it has not done so far. All the ailments of the body politic, including increasing violence and crime and other explosions rocking societies and individuals, they proceed from this devaluation of man himself. Man has become devalued. Everything else is highly valued except man himself. Our humanism, therefore, is not strong enough. It has not been able to make for real humanity to inspire man. That's why after the Second World War, even humanism is questioned, is not able to inspire us, because in the last war, millions and millions of men and women were killed and murdered by man himself. If that is man, how can we have faith in him? As we lost faith in God through the earlier experience, we lose faith in man through this modern experience. Without a faith, we remain today mostly anarchic in thinking, anarchic in action. That's what you see in front of us in a developing way as civilization in trouble, in turmoil. We can destroy civilization purely from intensifying this very turmoil. We don't need a barbarian to come and attack as was done in the Roman civilization. We can breed barbarians within ourselves by not knowing this profound datum, the spiritual nature of man. This is the compulsion that makes us view a subject such as this new dimension as something urgent for man and for his education. Fortunately, there have been educational thinkers in the modern age, post to our age, who have been focusing on this subject little by little. I refer to one such effort by the UNESCO, appointing an educational commission with the French Prime Minister and previously Education Minister Edouard Faure. This commission to study education in the world studied, investigated, and then published a report. And the report, many education commissions have been there in all parts of the world, including India and Australia. This commission and its report has a special significance in the context of what I said so far during this lecture. And that is the title given to that report. Title is Learning to Be, a new concept in education. For these 400 years, the old dimension of education stressed on learning to do, how to be efficient, how to handle machines, how to handle these economic and social forces outside. Learning to do is really a great aspect of education. But by itself, it can be our undoing. It can become counterproductive. That's what 20th century civilization shows every one of us. Unless learning to do is complemented and nourished by a learning to be process, learning to do can result in turning all life into a disaster. So what is this learning to be? Be yourself. What's the meaning of that? There are so many recommendations in that report. I particularly welcome certain educational goals mentioned in the report, in which one is education is not simply schooling or going to college and university. It is education for life. Lifelong education is a word used there. Many other thinkers also have said it before. Ramakrishna himself, in one of his sayings, said, "As long as I live, so long do I learn." But in this report, this is put, but not adequately. That's my criticism of the report. You can go on learning throughout life. In what way? Today you learn one particular art or industry or work, tomorrow something else, lifelong you can learn. But that makes life only in one particular dimension. It doesn't go deeper at all. You become constantly renewed in your occupational competency, what you call efficiency of doing, that's all. It doesn't increase efficiency of being unless you go deeper into yourself. That subject is very hardly touched in that report. Second is education of the whole man, not only just a bit of him. That is perfectly valid. That's absolutely necessary. But in this particular case of education for life, we should consider that capacity for doing must be complemented by capacity for being. And that being comes by a new process. That's called deepening of the human awareness, taking psychic energy to higher and higher levels. What they call shifting consciousness from a lower to a higher level, or intensifying the psycho-social evolutionary process. Out of that growth and evolution come as a byproduct ethical values, moral awareness, deeper humanistic thinking and action. A rich man comes upon the scene, inwardly rich, to match the external riches that have come to him through control of the environment, through science and technology. That will be a complete education for man, both inside as well as outside. The technique of this inward education is slightly different from the technique from that outward education. There it is always doing. Here there is emphasis on being. And the greatest technique of being is what the world now today understands as meditation. Be yourself, be yourself. This is a great subject. When I was traveling in the United States, I came across a book, The Handbook of American Psychiatry, a thick volume. In that, towards the end, the authors tell us that modern education does make for work efficiency, but something else is missing. In fact, something else has practically gone out, namely creativity of the human spirit. How to create creativity in man? That human child must be given creativity. This deletion of value of creativity from education has been noted by earlier thinkers as well. In fact, in a very caustic passage, Bertrand Russell said, every child has a capacity for creative thinking. One of the aims of modern education is to cure him of this habit. This is what he said. But today in America, these writers, they are great psychologists, they bemoan absence of creativity in modern children. Everything else is there. And if this creativity is not fostered, great pure science and pure art and pure religion, pure aesthetics, nothing can come. Everything will become utilitarian, utilitarian, utilitarian. And we realize today that modern civilization is under one tyranny, tyranny of utility, material utility. And creativity and utilitarian attitudes are just opposites. They can never go together. That's the teaching of the great masters of religion in the past and great thinkers, humanist thinkers today. So these authors suggest remedies which can really help to foster creativity. One of which is, let the child remain alone, let it remain even lazy, don't emphasize always doing, let them be themselves more and more. Even moonwalking must be encouraged, creativity. These are the words he uses there. Moonwalking must be encouraged to foster creativity. These are very wonderful suggestions. But all these are taken up in that science of man in depth in the Upanishads known as Adhyatma Vidya, where this technique of meditation, where you confront yourself, deeper and deeper layers of the human personality, until you come upon something stable, something enduring, something like a rock on which you can build the edifice of life and civilization. In the language of Jesus, that is the Atman, the infinite Atman, one with all. That realization brings compassion as a byproduct, natural. You yourself feel oneness with all. That compassion and love is the greatest desideratum of the age in which we are living. The individual becomes universal in love and compassion by a certain growth within himself or herself. And that growth is already given to you as a possibility. Education fosters that possibility, makes it possible to express it. All these ideas of the great science of man in depth, known as Adhyatma Vidya, are conveyed to us by Swami Vivekananda in a famous testament of Vedantic faith in a few propositions. Each soul is potentially divine is the first proposition. The goal of life is to manifest this divine within by controlling nature external and internal. External nature is controlled by science, technology, politics, economics, etc. Internal nature is controlled by the discipline of ethics, morality, aesthetics and religion. And do this and be free. And that is the whole of the science of religion, says Vivekananda. Doctrines and books and temples and churches are secondary details. So education, reckoning this great fact of man, that he has a profound dimension within himself behind this organic system, we have to put the child on the road of his psychosocial evolution, and so we awaken in him this deep fact that is within himself and a desire to take that step onward march. We give him a thorough education in doing, make him efficient to handle the world around him, so that this base is kept intact, healthy and pure. But we don't leave him there, stagnant, a stagnant pool of ailments and grievances as we are today. But we also turn him a little of his leisure and direction in that new direction of evolution, grow spiritually. As you have grown physically from that baby of 7 pounds into a nice young man of 150 or 200 pounds, as you have grown in mind from that weak baby without a grip on life to the most modern, efficient man with a grip on life, the same growth you must achieve in that inner dimension, namely spiritual. That is called the spiritual growth of man in language of philosophy and religion, and psychosocial evolution in the language of modern biology. Here you have the new dimension of education. In all parts of the world, if thinkers recognize this and shape educational policies and methods in recognition of this truth, so that you leave a child, you do not take him on the road, but after he finishes the education of this positivistic sciences and other humanistic knowledge, we gently whisper to him, there is a big world for you to conquer. Go in that road. It's a long road, also hard to walk, not easy, but it's a daring road, challenging road, like climbing Mount Everest. With that blessing, leave the child from the school and college. Our present system of education has done its best to restore sanity to modern man in this modern age. The great Upanishads, conveying this message from a teacher to a student, blessed that student with these great words, which can become the real watchword of this new dimension of education in the modern age. Uttishthatha jagrata prapya varan nibodhata shurasya dhara nishita duratyaya durgam patastat kavayo vadanti. Arise, awake, approach the great ones who have realized this truth and learn from them the wherewithal of this great journey to complete fulfillment. And I tell you, the path is hard, difficult to tread, hard to cross, like walking on the edge of a razor. With a sauntering attitude, you can't climb Mount Everest. You need earnestness, you need courage, you need clarity of thinking. But all this you will have with the education you have received so far in sciences, humanities, with your capacity to handle the world around you. Now invest a portion of this great energy of personality in this mountain climbing, the height of experience itself. That is a wonderful clarion call in the Upanishads. And note that clarion call, Uttishthatha jagrata, arise, awake. What a contrast to what 19th century considered the message of religion. Religion is putting people to sleep. It is hypnotizing people. That's the language used at the time. Or as Karl Marx said, though what he said is true, but most of religion in the world, opium of the people. Here is another language from the Upanishads. It is dehypnotization, not hypnotizing. You consider you are this tiny organic system. You consider you are this tiny ego. You exploit others. You do violence. You do all this. You don't know what your nature is. There is a profound dimension sleeping within you. Stir it. Awaken yourself to it. Something great will happen to you. What a beautiful idea. Meditation, inwardness, and looking out, seeing man in a new light. Befriend him. Be his friend. Be his servant. Try to love him. Through these various methods, external and internal, the child can walk steadily on this long path of psychosocial evolution. This is the possibility lying in front of us, so that before 2000 AD, the world in general will understand this great subject and start to change course in that direction, keeping a full hold on the environment through the positive sciences. We can hope for a new century of hope, reconciliation and peace in the 21st and succeeding centuries. Man has the knowledge. Man has the organic capacity to explore every part of the world. And many scientists tell us today that modern civilization started with exploration. First geographical, explore the Western countries, discover America, every island, every continent, every forest, every mountain peak. Then we went down the ocean. Then we went up the sky, went up to the moon, went to the planets. These are all explorations. These are wonderful. But there is one exploration that is challenging today. Anyone with the capacity given to them by modern scientific training and discipline must be able to be fascinated with this new challenge before him. Explore the hinterland of your own mind, hinterland of your own consciousness. It is completely neglected all the time. That is a challenging task. And that is the great new dimension of education. Help a child with this great new challenge. As I said, you need not help him in detail, but tell him that what we have taught you so far in a university is only one part of the whole story. Now take up the other by your own efforts. And that is what is called lifelong education. If I am to modify that learning to be a report, it is in this dimension, that learning to do is only to earn bread, to enjoy a decent organic existence. But learning to be is to become rich in a fundamental sense. So that lifelong education must refer to this new dimension, namely learning to be, discovering the profound dimension hidden behind the self, behind the consciousness of man, which is flimsy as at present. That's what great teachers did. That's what they were. And one result will be very, very revealing in this dimension. And referring to this, I shall conclude my speech on this most important theme, relevant theme for modern man. This sub-science of man in depth studies one subject, like science, physics and technology studies another subject. Energy resources in nature, what physics has studied and given us control over vast energy resources, including atomic energy and now solar energy. But the other subject is entirely neglected. What are the energy resources in this human being? This science handles this subject. And it says, man has three dimensions of energy resources. Every one of them succeeding one, more subtle, more immense, and more truly himself. What are they? First is muscular energy, what we call in science language as horsepower or bull power. Horsepower it is. Everybody has plenty of horsepower, and the younger we are, the more of horsepower, muscle power. We have developed it. We have got first class wrestlers. There's got fine horsepower in the body. That's good, but it's not a very high power. Modern rockets contain more than 1,000,000 horsepower thrust. What is this horsepower? This is not the greatness of man. We need it. We shall retain it. We shall develop it. The second power is something wonderful. Psychic energy, intellectual energy, to understand the world, to control it, to manipulate it, and to create a very industrial civilization. That's beautiful. The second energy resource. But there is a third energy resource which is highly neglected. Even in the second, there are two layers. Beyond the muscle is the nervous system. Though it is subtle and less immense than the muscle, but it controls the muscle. A strong muscle is destroyed if a nerve fiber is cut away. So subtle and yet so immense in range and power. Similarly, beyond the nervous system is the psychic system of man. That psyche, if it fails, all nerve, all muscle is dead. They can't function at all. So, our teachers discovered in their investigation into the nature of man that human resources or human energy resources are organized in man in ascending scale of subtlety, immensity, invertness. I am quoting through three great words used by Shankaracharya in his commentary on the Katha Upanishad. Sukshma, Mahantascha, Pratyagapna Bhutascha. Energy resources are organized in every human being in an ascending scale of subtlety, immensity, inwardness. Muscle is outward, nerve is inward. Nerve is outward, psyche is inward. In this way, when you go, you see subtlety, immensity, and inwardness. More and more energy you come across there. Then you reach finally the center of man himself, the infinite Atman, where energy resources become infinite in the true sense of the term. That's the language used in that commentary by Shankaracharya. With this knowledge behind you, ask only one question. What was the energy resource of men like Jesus, Buddha, Sri Ramakrishna? They seem to have enormous energies. They are all dead and gone. Still they impact on the people. Millions of people for hundreds of years. There must be a powerful energy in them. Certainly it is not muscular. They were not very strong muscular energy people. Neither is it intellectual. Greater scholars have been there. That energy seems to be something very, very subtle, very deep inside man. And they have released it in themselves. And many others also have done it. And our great philosophy of Vedanta says, every child has these energy resources in itself, including this infinite energy resource named the Atman. Atmana vindate vidyam, said the Kena Upanishad. Knowledge of the Atman can give you infinite energy, not this finite energies that we have at the muscular level, intellectual level. An intellectual man can become thoroughly beaten by a little force from outside. One insult is enough to make him depressed and go and commit suicide. Where is that strength in him? Whereas spirituality is infinite energy. And as I began, that this human system can be converted into an industrial plant of a new sort. We have processing industrial plants in technology. Raw material comes, passed through a processing process, comes out as pure steel, pure gold, and various things. Similarly, all sorts of experiences come to the human system. There a processing takes place. Evil comes to me, I give back evil. Evil comes to a Jesus or a Buddha, he gives back as good. What is the nature of that processing? Here you have the height of ethical, moral, and spiritual value system, compassion. You hate a man, and he loves you back. That man must be unique. Nothing in nature does. The language of Newton, action and reaction equal and opposite. In the case of man, it can be changed. The entire physical law is reversed. You scold a man, he will scold you back. You scold him 10 times, he will scold you exactly 10 times. No, he can also vary. He can scold you 10 times, 20 times, more intensely than what you did. He is not a slave. Why should he only have reaction? He can have original action. A man abused me, I abused him 10 times backwards. That's called my freedom. But I can keep quiet also. I can send him love. I can send him compassion. That's, I am free. What else can be the demonstration of man's freedom than this great experience? These giants of religion and spirituality, they get hatred from the world, they send out love and compassion. What a beautiful idea. And this great truth is founded to us not as a specialized preserve of somebody, the universal legacy of all human beings. Everyone has it. Esha sarveshu bhuteshu gudho atma na prakashate drishyate svagriya buddhya sukshmaya sukshmadarshibhi, says the teacher to the student in that Katha Upanishad. This infinite Atman is the heritage of every being, but it is lying hidden. It has to be made manifest, and it can be manifested by giving a thorough discipline for all these impediments and reveal to yourself your own true infinite nature. Meditation is such a technique, highly developed in both East and West among the great mystics. But this forms an item in the great science of man, his growth, development, fulfillment. Imagine, just for theoretical purposes, modern man developing tremendous spiritual energy resources within himself. What a beautiful compliment to all the energy resources coming from physics and technology from the outside. What a happy life, external and internal, fulfilled external and internal, rich external and internal, will come to man. That's why it complements our achievements so far. It doesn't negate them. Normally religion was presented as something negating your achievements in the physical world or in the physical life. Here it is presented as something complementary, something raising human life to higher and higher levels, where this is only a base for further attack to higher dimensions of experience. That is the great possibility lying before us today. There is knowledge, there is wisdom available. In fact, Bertrand Russell will make a distinction between knowledge and wisdom. Physical sciences, technology, politics, economics, they give us knowledge. But knowledge is not enough. Knowledge can be bitter, as we see today. We want knowledge to rise to wisdom. If you don't do so, he says, if knowledge doesn't rise to wisdom, increase of knowledge shall be increase of sorrow. He said like that. So today, knowledge rising to wisdom must be the new dimension of education. Man must know how to handle himself. That's what gives you wisdom. Man must know how to handle the external world. That's what gives you true knowledge. These two must complement each other. So the learning to do and learning to be become two dimensions of the same educational process where man achieves total fulfillment, individual and free. That possibility is available to man today. To turn our attention towards it and increasingly catch up with this great problem is the work, challenging work that lies before us in the remaining years of this wearisome and yet challenging 20th century. Thank you all.
There is some time for some questions. My impulse is to let Swamiji rest for a minute, but possibly that isn't necessary. So if there are any questions, and Swamiji, will you remember to rephrase them for the recording?
The pivotal point in your argument, and it will take I'll go through the chain if I may. You postulated towards the end of the course the existence of infinite spirituality, and you suggested that the postulation can come from the ultimate fulfillment. And in order to suggest that, you suggested that man can have some control of his psychosocial evolution. In order to postulate that, there was a suggestion that man has an ego, a collection of values, and that in turn implies the existence of ethics and values, and that in turn implies freedom, and this brings me to the critical point. You suggested that there is now evidence that man can alter his physical intensity. And the biologist produces that. And that in itself is the fundamental feature of your argument, because that enables man to free, and therefore there will take a change in quality. Now I'm very interested to know the nature of the evidence, and to ask how it would be possible to produce such evidence without knowing that you were just stepping back earlier into another physico-chemical causal change lies behind the level of your investigation.
We start from where we are now, according to our present understanding, and as I said, we only deepen our awareness, so that as you deepen yourself, the question of values you referred to, these values come from a deeper level of the human personality. First of all, we have to make sure to ourselves that these values do not lie outside in rocks or the sky or in trees, etc., etc. Values come from a deeper level of the human personality when man so alters the environment as to make possible this rising to the deeper level and stirring there to produce these values. There comes education. And in this connection, I should quote the late Bertrand Russell, who said, the post-war speeches, that values do not lie outside. Till now we thought by manipulating external environment, we can automatically create values. To a certain extent, We can create conditions for the emergence of value from man. That's all these things can do. So in that protest, he says, the machine is a modern form of Satan, and its worship is the modern diabolism. Whatever else may be mechanical, values are not. And this is something no political philosopher should forget. In that protest you can see that all the external manipulations of human conditions of living cannot automatically create values. They create conditions for the emergence of values from within man himself, the spiritual depth of man. That is why education geared to the emergence of values is correct education. And that education becomes spiritually, what you call, very much influenced or inspired. And
focused on my issue. The issue is that in order to have ethics and morals and values, you have to have freedom.
Freedom?
Your postulation is that this is now traceable back to alterations and extensions of the mind.
This subject, when we deal with it that way, we are still dealing with it in the sense of Aristotelian logic, something called a logical approach. But when you approach from the life point of view, every minute you find you have the freedom. We are only exercising. When I logically discuss, is there freedom or is there unfreedom, we are not able to come to any decision. But when I take the first step onward, I find I am free. So, this philosophy says, assert it. You find it there. We are not conditioned all the time. Even scientific research, we are not conditioned. We can take this research or that research. If anybody were to say, I took to physics only because I was conditioned by the physics of my brain to do that, that would be too much going. We do accept man has freedom to choose this and that, because all morals depend upon man's choice. If he has no choice, he has no morality. So
this is the whole issue.
No, it's not an issue. We break the issue by going away from merely logical, what you call non-contradiction standard of logic, into actual living logic. The living logic breaks many contradictions of formal logic. That we have to recognize. Today's man doesn't recognize it. Too much under the condition of Aristotle's definition of logic as non-contradiction. If A is true, non-A is false. That kind of attitude. But all thinkers dealing with man says that doesn't apply to man or to life, only to his system of thinking. Thinking is based on this logical system, not life. Life breaks down so many of these logical contradictions every minute. Recognize it, says this philosophy. Don't be conditioned by logic only when you come to life and its values. Reason is more than logic. In fact, formal logic was so flimsy compared to this classical logic. And classical logic has become so little compared to relativity and quantum logic. These are going deeper and deeper. And there you already find breakdown of that old formal logic of determinism. If that is so in nature, the same thing also is in man. Life destroys these contradictions in logic. That's the idea.
Well, thank you very much, Swamiji, and thank you very much, audience. I've had some exposure to Swamiji before, but I had one idea that I wanted to share with you on the basis of this exposure, and that is my tremendous awareness at this point of the amount of effort that Swamiji has made, and which to my knowledge is a rather unique effort to master Western thought and the implications of modern science for the purpose of and as an entree into our Western minds, so that Swamiji can then relate to us the tremendous ideas which come from his orientation and background. And as a teacher who sometimes remembers and sometimes does not remember to practice dealing with people at their level and attempting to understand them and their idea frameworks and their feelings, I'm very impressed by this effort. So thank you very, very much, Swamiji, on behalf of everyone, and good night.